Today I'm talking about drawing and perspective. If those put chills into your spine, I'm hoping that my demonstration here today will allow you to jump into this with some confidence and have some fun. I'm going to show you a few simple methods that make this much easier than you would think, and hopefully with a little practice you'll be jumping in and putting buildings into your own landscapes pretty shortly. So today I'm on the property of Bower Farm Park in Madison, Connecticut. Bower Farm was built in the 1800s and has been here as a farm until the late 1990s, when it was donated by the family to the town of Madison as a public park, and it's been utilized and appreciated ever since. I'm looking at the old farmhouse across the street here, and this beautiful old white building. I'd like to show you how I would put that into perspective. This would not be the actual composition in the painting, but more a drawing of this building to give you a sense of working out the drawing. If I were to be doing a painting of this, and I will be doing that later after this in a further video, I would make a study of the building so I get to know it. I also like to know a little of the history and background of it. It all adds into your painting in the end. So I'm going to just jump right in with my method for studying this building a little bit. So the first thing I would do, as always in any painting, is establish my horizon line. Your horizon line is subject to your own eyes in the location you're standing at this moment. So in order to find that, it's so simple. It's literally what you see right in front of you. If you put a brush or a pencil right in front of your eyes, you'll see the horizon line. In this case, it falls for me about a quarter of the way up the building. So the thing to remember that makes this much easier is that everything below the horizon line rises up and everything above the horizon line will go down. The second thing that I would do would be to take an overall width versus compared to height measurement, so that I would know how large this building is, the height compared to the width. What I'm using in this case, you can use a pencil, you can use a brush. I like these funky metal pieces I pick up at the hardware stores, just a piece of steel, but they stay very straight and they allow me to use them as a plumb line, to take angles. You'll see me using it a lot in this video. So I've got the general height, and now key item is to stay in one spot. Sometimes I'll mark that with putting something on the ground in front of my foot, and keeping your arm locked, rigid, like a robot, because as you would to move your elbow, you would change your measurement. So I'm going to do that now. There's the height. One. It is, from my angle, twice as wide as it is high. So if my height, here is the bottom of my building, if my height is this, and that means to the peak of the roof, then my width is that far. I'm going to do a smaller version so that I can actually line up with this glass so that you can see exactly what I'm doing. The reason I'm using the glass is because this is a two-dimensional surface, and I want you to be able to take the brain jump that in order for something to look three-dimensional, it only takes a few angles on this two-dimensional plane to establish and create the same effect. So this is my horizon line. Here is the top of my building. So the first shape, which is a square from the peak of the roof to the ground, and you see me measuring that from here to here. How do I get those angles? Very simply. I'm going to take this, hold it up to it, arm rigid, literally take that angle that I see, put it over here, and put it on the glass. The second thing that you'll see me do is find the angle that relates to the horizon line. As I had said before, everything above will start to go down to the horizon line, everything below will go up. The closer anything is to the horizon line, it will flatten up. The farther something is away, the steeper the angle. So the edge of the roofs, the overhangs, have a slight angle. And eventually, if this were to be continued, this angle would meet this. The bottom line, which even though it's very close to this, is going to be almost straight, but it still has a slight angle, which I'm pulling out right now, closing one eye, holding my line up to it. And that's far shallower and reaches that horizon line very quickly. So I'm using this stick for measurement. I want to know how much depth, how long should that line be for the roof. So I can take it, slide my thumb down, get a measurement, and compare that to the front of the roof. And it falls not quite, a little over 3/4. And again, I'm not going to worry about math, architectural details, nothing. I'm getting the angles just by literally copying them. And hopefully, actually, I can almost even get them lined up and they're working fine. The roof angle going down, once again, all you have to do is reach out, make sure it's on this plane, and make a line. How deep does that go? I'm going to compare the side of the building. Again, rigid arm, sliding my thumb until I make a measurement, but I need to compare it to something. So I'll compare it to the roof again, and it's a little over half. You wonder, how do I find the center and the peak of the roof? That's actually very simple. Remember I said this was originally a square. If I go from one corner to the other and make an X, you see how the X is larger on this side than this side? That's actually the center of the building in perspective, and it works out very well. And it'll allow you to then understand that the windows will be smaller on one side than the other. I'm left with one last piece of this building, and again, I'm holding a piece of my wire up, whether I do it here or do it on the glass. What's that angle? Just reach out and take it. Go forward, put it on here. I'm going to do the same thing on a piece of paper in a minute, but I wanted you to be able to see the idea of these angles making the angles that will give you a three-dimensional aspect on a two-dimensional plane. And I'm going to jump to paper in a minute. I'm going to put the camera here so you can see this. Let me make this a little thicker. The first thing I do is do a really small sketch to place the building in the landscape. So I've done that in advance. This is not where you need to be careful with any details or architectural details or really just placement. And I've guesstimated the size of my canvas and placed it so that the horizon line is fairly low to me on the canvas. And I'm looking at shapes in comparison to sizes and variety of values that will be in here. Presently, it's a completely overcast day, and so this building, which would normally be filled with light in the front right now, is completely all the same value, but it's perfect for practicing a little drawing. So when you're doing any structure in the landscape or in perspective, the vertical lines are just that, they stay vertical, but the horizontal lines will diminish as they go into space and as they go down, literally in this case, down the road. And if I were to continue this angle, your eye will pick up that difference between here and here, the bottom of my supposed canvas, and this side. And as you continue out, it will eventually meet. The top of the building, which is further away from the horizon line, will have a steeper angle. Honestly, you don't have to worry about these things, because what you can really do a lot of the time is just reach out and take those angles. So there is the center of my building. That mark was my highest height. And as for the roof, again, I'm going to just show you. I'm just going to reach out and take those angles. I'm not going to, you can begin to start just by reaching out with a rigid arm, copying the angles and putting them down. I can quickly draw this building. That's what makes this drawing in perspective so easy. If you think that it's not looking right, sometimes it's because you've begun to go into a three-dimensional angle. So constantly go back to this two-dimensional plane so that you know that you're taking it on the same plane. The roof as well. How deep is that roof? How far back does it go? And I'm looking from this line up. And it is just a smidge beyond this line. So there's the end of the roof. Once again, I can take that angle of the roof, and roofs are going to constantly change. Every building has a slightly different roof angle. Now you'll see once again that this will eventually go down to this horizon line, whereas this side will rise up to the horizon line. This is under the porch where the bushes are. Now they've made an addition back in 1920 actually of adding a kitchen onto this old farmhouse. So it's got a little bit of a funky corner here. Now remember, here's my end of the building. The roof peak is over here. I can put this in lightly and guesstimate and then correct it with my angles. You can go back and correct it by copying those angles with your drawing pencil and your drawing stick. And you'll see that the lines up above are steeper, and as they come down, they become, here's your horizon line, they become less steep. They start to flatten out as they go down to the horizon line. Once again, I'll use this as a plumb line, and here's an intersection, and straight down from that intersection is the post of the porch. So you can use your drawing stick or pencil or brush for 100 different things. When I am painting, I'm not as worried about the windows become more details. I save those for last when I'm sure that my drawing is correct. This is receding as it's going down. So if I were to be doing a large painting of this, I would really want to study this in pencil before I started to paint it. You'd get a lot of decisions and you'd learn a lot about what you were doing. I'm going to just show you the angle of these two porches. As it's in the front of the building, it's like this. As it goes to the side, it changes its angle because one is headed in this direction, the other one is headed in this direction. It's ever so slight, but it makes all the difference. You get the ground plane set. Got a lot of bushes in here, so it's hard to really see the exact angles, but we can pretty well guesstimate. When you're doing the windows, the same exact thing happens. You will follow the angles. So just as this recedes, the windows will also angle, and when you get to the horizon line, they're going to be pretty level. So here's straight, and the bottom of those windows are pretty darn straight. They're here and here. Again, the verticals remain verticals. And they line up above each other. Now the windows on the top, here is straight, but those windows tilt ever so slightly on the front of this building. And they are just under the eave, so I'm keeping that the same. The width of the windows on the right are going to be slightly different than the windows on the left, which are closer. Another thing to keep in mind is this, which is the item that is absolute closest to us, will always be larger than the side that is further away from us. You can see how much of a difference that is. I'm determining the top of these windows by comparing them to the eaves. The bottom of the window ends up being really close to the top of the side porch. So yes, this takes some time. Oh, I love this line. The porch and the top of the windows and the top of the door frame are all exactly the same. There's a lot of symmetry you can pick up on. This door is totally not center. It's definitely off. And that's what makes this old farmhouse so funky. So it's lying in here. And no front steps. That must have been dropped off long ago. Entrance now is from the back. And there's one window right on top of that. Lastly, I'll just drop in the line for the windows on the side. Again, going back to two-dimensional, comparing it to what I see. And because this recedes rather quickly and is on the same plane, notice it touches that, but it falls in that line. I'm lining it up. It just goes to the left of the post. And seen as, from this angle, these windows look like little tiny stripes. And I'm going to go on to a different building so that I can give you another example of drawing in perspective. This one was a pretty complicated structure, but you can see how you can break it down, and by just reaching out and taking the angles, it really makes it easy, even when it's something this complicated. So I'm going to attempt to draw in perspective this really old, over 100-century-old barn on the property here at Barrow Farm. The building I'm looking at is, the side is almost perpendicular, but the face is really receding into space as that goes down the street. So again, the first thing I'm going to do is get a height to width proportion so I can know how high that building is compared to the width. So I'm, with a rigid arm, measuring from the top of the building to the ground and then turning, and I get 1, 2, two widths, so it's 2 to 1, and then there's a little addition on the end. But we're going to go for the main building and add that on later. So if I'm doing 2 to 1, and I want to keep this fairly large so you can see it, there's the height, and here is the width. The second thing I would want to do is the division of the corner piece where the roof comes down. How wide is the face of that building compared to the side? These measurements just take a second. They're really pretty quick. So 1, 2, 3. Wow, so it's about a quarter. So that's pretty simple since I've already had this marked. There's a quarter. So this would be, and as you know, the vertical lines stay perfectly vertical. You can do that freehand or use a pencil. And my horizon line is right, I determined first, was right in front of the windows on that barn, which are pretty low on the building. Let's put a little ground floor in here. Here is going to be the largest vertical on that building. It is the one that is closest to me. Also want to see how much is roof and how much is building, because that looks pretty substantial. It's about 3/4 of the way down. So a little bit less. And again, these are all measurements by comparison. Now, I am almost perpendicular to this. So when I hold this up on this two-dimensional plane very straight and I go in comparison, there's just the slightest angle down. So in other words, it ends up going like this. As it gets closer to the horizon line, that is a little bit less, and the bottom one actually will go up. In this case, the ground falls away and they have stone structures built there, which is blocked by the bushes at the moment. But let's get into this piece by the street. So here is the face of that building, and it is headed down. Here, let's go put the horizon line back in so you can see it a little more clearly. So what's below the horizon line always rises up. What's above comes down. So I will find this headed toward the horizon line, and I'll go back to my two-dimensional plane, find that angle, bring it right over and put it in. The piece above, again, start at the two-dimensional plane, and as you can see, that's headed down toward the horizon line. This one is headed up, and you can easily see that receding in space. And to find the peak of the roof, again, as in the house, I'm going to simply draw an X. Because this is receding much more quickly, the side of the X is considerably larger than the other side, and that will allow me to find the peak, and I can either do this by go from point to point, or I can check it with an angle as well. Let's double check it. It's a very steep, and it's, yep, right on. Here's the continuation of that roof. And it goes down this far. I'm going for the angle, checking my plane is correct. And this is the spot marked where I had determined the entire structure was 2 times the width that it was in the height. And let's put some of these bushes in, which here is the road that we see from where we're standing. And the structure on the back, which is a tack-on of some type, probably feeding station, simply goes on there. And that's basically it. I'm going to keep this small and simple so that you're able to try this yourself. Go out and make several drawings, remembering that everything below the horizon line rises up, everything above rises down, and the item that is closest to you, the part of the building that is closest to you, is always the largest measurement, and everything going away is going to be smaller. You'll find this to be a lot easier than you ever thought. Thank you. Happy painting and drawing.